Welcome to yet another episode of Applied Salesforce. Here, I shall walk you through a micro project warranting the implementation of case management, specifically creating follow up case via trigger and also means to prevent recursive triggers. Without much ado, let's look at the scenario in detail. As a developer at upquotient.com, a career transformer and an amplifier company, you're asked by Kali, VP of Sales and Service, to implement the below requirement pertaining to case management. Requirement O1: when a case is logged and if its reason is set to break down, automatically create a follow up case and associate the same as the child case to the current one. The child case subject should be as below and its reason should be set to breakdown. So, this is the subject that is expected when you spawn a follow-up case or a child case automatically. It should have the parent's case number and also the parent's case subject along with the text at site certification required. So ideally the scenario after careful analysis, what you understood is when a case is created, it could be through any means. It could be through an API, it could be through a web service, or it could be manually created. And if its subject is set to break down, as per upquotient.com and as per Kali, you will have to automatically create a follow up case or a child case with the subject in this format, okay, and its reason set to break down. Okay, so that's the general background of this requirement. And as usual, after careful analysis, you jotted down the technical design plus some key considerations. So let's look at those things one after the other. The first one is about the trigger context. So trigger context means three things. One is the object context, and second is the event context, the DML event context, and third is the time context. So in order to implement this, the object context is obviously case because you're associating the trigger to the case object and you wanted to monitor the creation of a case. So the object context is obvious, and the second one is the event context. So the event context is pretty important as well because here you have two choice. One is the before context, before insert, and the second one is after insert. So in this case, after insert is appropriate because first thing is you need to be sure that the parent case is saved, and second important thing is you need to get the ID of the parent case because when you create the follow-up case, you need to associate the follow-up case with the parent case. So the ID becomes handy, and ID is only available inside of the after time context. Okay, and the third one, the DML. So sorry, so this is the DML event, and the time context is after. So the DML is obviously insert, so there is no confusion in it because you create a case. That's when you wanted the follow-up case to be created. If the parent case that you created has the reason set to break down. Okay, cool. So let's move on. And the second one is pretty important because there is a possibility of you know the the execution um, you know getting onto a recursion, right? Because we wanted to prevent recursive triggers, and this is obvious because while creating your case you are spawning a child case and doing an insert. Okay, so there is a possibility that the insert operation, right, triggers the or invokes the trigger again. So this happens multiple times and it goes into a recursion. So there is a possibility of the recursion in this context, and you read up um, on how you prevent recursion and the use of static variables, and what you understood, you have jotted it down. So static variables stay in memory for the duration of the entire execution thread, regardless of the number of times the class is referenced. This knowledge becomes handy to prevent trigger recursion. So this we will see in real time. What is this recursion I'm mentioning now, and the means to prevent the same. Okay, so let's, so before we get on to the application, I shall quickly walk you through the pseudocode. So the trigger, as per the best practice, the trigger is, I mean, for this context, the trigger is written on case, and the best practice says that you try to handle every possible event, right? Every possible context. So that's the reason we have, all possible, trigger context mentioned. And here I'm only concerned about the insert operation, and specifically the after insert part. Okay, that's the reason why the before insert block is left blank. And the after insert, as per the best practice, you don't write the core logic inside the trigger. You you have a helper class or a utility class, and have multiple utility methods, static utility methods, appropriate to the trigger that you are writing. So in this case, I've written a helper class or an utility class or an handler class named case helper class, and I have a method, that static method inside the helper class, named it as after insert, which takes a list of cases. So while calling the helper class from the trigger, you pass on trigger.new, which is a context variable which typically holds or stores the new versions of the instances. So in this case, the case instances, or in layman terms, the case records that are getting that just got saved. Okay, so this could be anything, right? So you can create a case manually or through the API or through the web services, it doesn't matter. So that's available as part of trigger.new list. It's a list, and that gets passed to a list which is accepted as a parameter for after insert um, helper method of case helper class. Okay, so that gets pushed into new parent case list. And the next line, you spawn or instantiate a list of type case. And the next line, you iterate over the past list of case. And parent becomes a running variable dipping into this list. And the next line, the code inside the for loop helps you to create an instance of case. This is the follow-up case that you're creating. Okay, and the um, parent ID, it's an out-of-the-box field on a case object that's set to the ID of the parent case that got just saved. And the subject, you set it to what is requested by Kali, the same format. Okay, that's the simple code, and the reason is set to breakdown. Okay, and the bulkification here, you you instantiated a list of cases here of case type, and you add the child cases into the case list, and outside of this loop, right, so perform a insert operation. Okay, so let's look at the code from the dev console. You could see the trigger, that's ditto, no changes, absolutely no changes at all. And the case helper class, slight change. Um, I commented out this subject for a reason. And the first thing that we are going to test is, I will show you what the recursion I was talking about. And in order to facilitate that, I had to change the subject to the much simpler one, the static one. um, okay, and I will show you the recursion, and then we get on to the actual requirement. preventing the recursion, right? So let me run through the application. I am on case um, tab, click on new case, click on next here, set the origin, which is one of the mandatory fields, to anything that you like. I just put it as I just selected phone, the case as test recursion sample one, just to show you what recursion is all about. And importantly, the case reason should be set to breakdown. Okay, clicking on save. And even before this, let me quickly check if there are logs. There is absolutely no logs generated. Click on save. And this is what I meant by the recursion. So you could see an message, which the error message, the exception, which is a DML exception. So maximum trigger depth exceeded. So case trigger event after insert. So this is um, you know exception, the DML exception, and you know the the platform, right? The engine execution engine attempts um, 16 times, right? So that's a recursion. So multiple recursion happens, and 16 time it happens, and beyond that, the platform itself terminates the code with this exception. And let's look at the logs. You can pick up this log, and you could see the multiple attempts being made. You could see all these are attempts. Okay, 16 times it does, and then finally system terminates with this exception. You could also see this exception here. The maximum trigger depth exceeded. Okay, so let's move on. How do we address this problem? This could be addressed with your knowledge of the static variables. So all that is required is to create a static variable within this class, helper class. Let's say static public static boolean executed already, probably execute already equals false. And this is at the class level. Okay, a class variable, and inside this you have to run a test. Okay, so let me do that here. If okay, not of, right? So not of this thing. So this is the first time, right? So this code is being executed for the first time. That is what it means. Okay, so let me put that here. Close the this if. Cool. Okay, so the if is done, and inside this you need to set it to true. It's being executed once. Okay, so executed already. Yes, it got executed. Okay, so click on save. This is how you address the problem of recursion. Let's see if everything is set. Don't see a problem. Let me save it one more time. Cool, it got saved. And what it means is, right, at the class level, it's a class variable or a static variable. Okay, so no, it retains its value. Okay, it retains its value across multiple invocations of this class if it is within the same execution context or within the same execution thread. Okay, thread, I mean. So what happens is this recursion. So when it is called for the first time, right? So this gets set to false. And here, when it enters when it evaluates the if condition, not of false, it's going to be true. And this block executes, right? This block executes. And the first statement itself, you manage to set it to true. And all of these executes, the insert happens, okay? And this insert, right? So it is going to trigger or invoke the same trigger one more time, okay? One more time. And your class method, right? So your static method after insert gets invoked, gets called, it reaches here, but it retains the value true. Executed already, static variable retains its value true. And not of true, it's going to be false. The entire block is skipped. Okay, that's how the you prevent this recursion. Okay, so let's look at the situation now. The same um, procedure to test origin is phone and case reason breakdown test. Now I put prevent question via. Okay, so let's check this out. Save. If it works perfectly, what is expected is the parent case that I'm creating now. This is the parent case, okay? Parent case. Okay, it should spawn, it should create, it should allow me to create a child case, which is follow-up case. Okay? Try this out, click on save. Perfect, it goes through. And I've also added a related list to the case page layout, which helps you to see the follow-up case. Okay, so in this case, I've just you know uh, used the follow-up as the subject, but what Kali wanted is the other subject. So let's test that as well. So I'm going to remove this and enable the subject. Perfect. So one more time. Okay, so the recursion is solved. Now I wanted the actual requirement with the subject, with this appropriate subject. So click here and create another case with the reason as breakdown. Okay, the final test and question on save. Let's take a good look at the subject as well. Okay, it goes through. Click on related, and this is the subject that we expect. Follow up to case, the parent case number, and the text final test prevent recursion. Cool. Okay, the parent subject. Okay, I guess you get the point, right? So there the okay, so at site certification required. Most probably you can amend the subject here, right? After the parent subject, you can concatenate the string, build up the string to get exactly what Kali required. Okay, take it as an exercise. So for now, the requirement is complete. Everyone is happy. The demo is done. Kali is happy, and you, as the seasoned developer, right? So you maintain the status, and you look forward for further challenges with other micro projects. Thanks for watching. We'll catch up with another episode of Micro Project later. Thanks, folks. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.